Well, good morning, sports fans, and welcome again to another edition of the PR Man and the Coach Talking Ball on the BallFather podcast presented by Sports Kita. I'm Reggie Roberts, longtime NFL communications executive and former NFL writer, and we are joined, as always, by the incomparable Mike Smith, winning his head coach in Falcons history. Coach, good morning. How you doing today, man?
Doing great, Rick. I just hope you're doing well.
A lot of good stuff this weekend. A lot of really good stuff going on in the NFL. And you pick up the newspaper. You look on wherever you get your news. You look on the website today, on the website ESPN, Fox, and there was some controversy from the meetings this weekend. Usually those meetings, the league meetings that take place early in the year, whether in New York or in Atlanta, wherever they are, they usually don't produce a whole lot of news. But there was some news coming out today where Mr. Irsay, who owns the Colts, says that there's merit to remove Dan Snyder as owner of the Commanders, which has got Twitter abuzz, and it's a lot of people talking. And then there's also apparently Robert Kraft, who got married over the weekend, had some words with Cowboys owner Jerry Jones about the language in Roger Goodell's upcoming proposed compensation. So there's a lot of news off the field going on, along with the great news that's going on on the field. So we'll kind of get right into it and kind of talk about the hottest team in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, in my opinion, Coach, the Eagles are the NFL's most complete team. You know, their 6-0 record also definitively says that the Eagles are the NFL's best team. ESPN NFL analyst Ryan Clark, during his commentary on Overreaction Monday, said the Eagles are going to be the NFC's representative at Super Bowl 57 that will be played on Sunday, February 12th at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. You know, while Clark may be a little early in his bold prediction, be it that the Eagles have 11 games remaining and the dangerous gauntlet that's the NFL playoffs, I think he's got every right to be confident based on the Eagles' play on Sunday. The one thing I keep hearing, especially from the writers, including a writer who was at that game on Sunday, was that the Eagles' success isn't going to keep going because he thinks the Sirianni's offense is a scaled-back collegiate spread offense that Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts seems to be running pretty well. So, what do you think, Coach? I mean, you're the king of adapt, improvise, and adjust. What do you think about the Eagles' offense, and do you think they're going to be able to continue their winning ways based on what they're doing on offense?
Well, they're 6-0, so you are what your record says. So right now they're the best team in the NFL, but that's for week 6. You know, we don't know what's going to happen the next 10 weeks, but Coach Sirianni's doing a great job. He's playing to the strength of his quarterback, Jalen Hurts. You know, they are statistically doing some really good things. They're second in the points differential, and they're winning pretty. They're not winning ugly. They're winning pretty, and that's what's got them to 6-0. And, people talk about the spread offense. Look, they have some spread principles in their offense. There's no doubt about it. And he's doing a great job. Hurts is running the spread that basically he ran at Alabama and Oklahoma. Yeah. You know, when you run the ball as a quarterback in the NFL, averaging 12 attempts a game, which that's what he's doing, you're either running the triple option, which nobody's running, or you're running the spread offense. And he's doing it very effectively. The one thing that stands out, he's taking care of the football. He's only thrown 2 interceptions in 6 games. And he's doing a really nice job. Reggie, you look at their stats. Their total offense, they're number 2 in the league. In the run offense, they're 5, and their passing offense, they're 12. That's pretty good. And we can't forget, it's not just about the offense. You've got the offense, defense, and special teams in the NFL to be successful. And they're doing a good job on defense. They're 4th in total defense, 15th against the run, and 6th against the pass. And those are so good numbers. And they've got some great players that are playing well right now.
Yeah. There was a note that I saw how the leaders on defense are doing a really nice job of policing these guys against getting the big head, saying we haven't done anything yet. You also need good defensive leaders. I remember in Atlanta, you had you had what was called our war council, and those guys kind of gave you the pulse of the team. How important, Coach, is it for the head coach to have a group of team leaders that can anytime give him sort of the pulse of what's going on inside the locker room when he's not there?
Reggie, I think it's super important, and it really leads to the success of a team when you have those touch points as a head football coach. You can get the pulse of the locker room, and we tried to make sure that we had one in every room. And what I meant by in every room is, the DBs, they had their room where they met. You had to have somebody in that room. You had to have somebody in each position group that you could go to, and because it's a long season, there's 50, there's a lot of drama in the NFL. You mentioned it earlier about what's going on at the owners level. Just matriculate that out to the offense, the defense, the special teams, the support. Right. There's a lot of drama that goes on in an NFL year and an NFL season, but the Eagles seem to have a great core of guys, and when guys that are the leaders are playing well, it helps even more. And that secondary right now is playing outstanding. He's got 3 interceptions. CJ Gardner's got 3 interceptions, and James Bradbury's got 2 interceptions. And those, when you make plays, you can speak to the rest of the team, and they're going to listen. And they've got really good players, and they're playing complementary football, and that's important. The offense is complementing the defense, and the defense is complementing the offense. Okay,
thank you, Coach. Appreciate that. Let's go on to what's going on in New England. New England backup quarterback Bailey Zappi, filling in for the injured Mac Jones, told Boston reporters that he didn't learn he was starting Sunday's game against the Browns till late on Saturday. The late notice didn't seem to phase Zappi, threw for over 300 yards and tossed 2 touchdown passes to help power the Patriots to a 38-15 win over the Browns. Coach, let me ask you this. Injuries happen. They're part of the NFL. Guys get hurt. You lose people. You lose your starting quarterback. You lose your starting tackle. It happens. You have to improvise and adjust, which is what you used to say all the time. How impressive do you think Zappi's playing right now, especially because backup quarterbacks don't get a lot of reps during the week?
Well, he stepped in with Mac Jones being injured, and he's done a very good job. And of course, usually if the number one quarterback's not playing well, the most popular guy on the team is the backup quarterback. In terms of the processing that went through the decision making, it's not a surprise to me that they didn't announce. Especially in New England.
Right. Correct. Right.
It's hard to get information out of New England. You really don't know how many reps he took last week. Maybe
that's a good point.
They split it 50-50. Maybe they knew that Mac Jones was getting close to being ready and may have to go in the game if Zappi played and got hurt or injured. So we don't know all the details, and that's typical New England way that they do things, and probably the way it should be done. And I'm sure that the media in New England, they're only there for 15 minutes.
That's it.
Mandated. I think it's still 15 minutes. And
yes, sir.
Then they're out of there. And in those first 15 minutes of practice, you don't see a whole lot. Different teams had different philosophies. As we let our media stay for the entire practice.
They still talk about that. They still talk about how great you were as far as the access, and it's not that way now. It hasn't been that way since you left, but they still talk. I talk to Ledbetter all the time. They still talk about how great you were with regards to the access. But didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
No, and of course, on that subject, as long as they understand the ground rules, that they can't write anything about what they saw at practice before the. Then that's the rules, and they were able to abide by that, and they got a lot more access that way. But different teams have different philosophies and how they're going to interact with the media.
Right. Let's keep going here, Coach. It's always cool. When I worked in New York, they used to say at the league office that it's always good for the league, and it's always good for the game when the Giants and the Jets are playing well. And that hadn't been the case for a while, but it is. The Giants are 5-1. just important to both teams to put themselves in position to make the 2022 season the most surprising season ever for the co-inhabitants of the stadium in the Meadowlands. Let's start with the Giants. They finally got a really good head coach, Brian Daboll, his defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, who I think I think you and Wink worked together in Baltimore. I think y'all did.
Wink came after I left, but
okay.
I know Coach Martindale, and he's done a great job there with the Giants, and he did a great job in Baltimore for all those years for Coach Harbaugh.
They're playing good. The defensive tackle Quentin Williams dominated the Packers on Sunday. Their rookie cornerback Sauce Gardner, who I think has got the best nickname in football right now, Sauce Gardner. He's a cornerback, played at Cincinnati, and he's probably en route to possibly win NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year honors with the way he's played. The Jets are 3-0 on the road, which is important. You got to be able to win road games. That's important. So let me ask you, Coach. I think the NFL is interesting. Is it more interesting when the Giants and Jets are playing good? What do you think's led to both of those teams' turnarounds, and why do you think they're playing so well right now?
Well, both teams are playing outstanding football right now, Reggie, as you mentioned. And yes, we need New York to play well, because that is such a big media market, and there are so many eyes. When the number one and the number two communication teams are working, when I mean communication teams, the TV teams, when the A group's there, it's
a big deal.
No doubt, because there's going to be more eyes on it. But the Giants, let's start with them. They're playing with a lot of confidence. Coach Daboll and his staff, they've done a great job in the first year one, of keeping this team believing that no matter what happens, they can win. They're also proof that stats are for losers. You know what I'm talking about? Stats are for losers.
Yeah.
If you look at them statistically, they're not a 5-1 team. If you look at them, they're a 1-5 team.
That's right. You're right. They're not in any of the top categories, but they keep winning. They've trailed in every game. 4 of the 5 wins have been comebacks in the second half. And you know what that says? They're building a culture of winning in the Meadowlands with the New York Giants. That's what they're doing. They're building this culture because they are not doing the things that you think teams that are one of the top teams in the NFL are doing. Look at their offense. They're 25th in yards per game. How about that? They're 31st in passing yards. They're 31st in sacks allowed. And they're 18th in points scored. But guess what? They're 5-1. You're right.
And on defense, they're doing some things very, very well. Like they're doing a great job in the red zone, but they're 28th in rushing yards per game. They're 32nd in rushing yards per game, and then they're 29th in their interception rate. They're not taking the ball over. Hey, and guess what? PFF, who everybody thinks PFF has all the answers, I'm sure,
right.
They rate the Giants offense at number 22 and the Giants defense at 27. But they are 5-1. It just matters. There's one stat that matters. It's one more point than the other team, and everybody's happy.
That's fantastic research, Mike. That's unbelievable that they've got all those really negative metrics and they're still 5-1. And I think you're right. I think that speaks to, a very competent coach who's instilled a really good culture of winning, and we're not going to panic, and we're not going to, even when we fall behind. Because when you look at that roster, up and down, that roster, it's not a real impressive roster. And they got some work to do in the offseason and in the upcoming years to kind of to reboot that roster. But it just tells you, it speaks to the fact of a competent coach, what he can do when he comes in and brings in a staff that believes and gets those guys to buy in.
Yes, and Rich, as you know, the difference between 1 and 32 is about this much in the National Football League. And that's why we've got through 6 weeks, we got so many teams that are, 3-3, 2-4, division leaders that are, that are 3-3. We got a long way to go in this season. Hey, figure out who's going to be there. And there's going to be a big number of teams that are going to be in the conversation when we get down to the middle of December. Usually it kind of clears out about Thanksgiving, but we're going to have a really interesting final 4 or 5 weeks in the National Football League. And as a football fan, you can't expect anything more than that. You want that. You want it to be, unless one team, only the one team fan, the best thing to happen is on week 16 and 17, there's only 1 or 2 spots in the playoffs
That's also dynamic is that, we were talking, we used to go to the league meetings and talk about, what we can do to sort of generate more interest in, try to attract fans who are sort of casual fans. And I think the one thing that's interesting, there's drama every week. There's drama. Every game leads to drama. What happens during the week with the media, what's said in the media, what interviews are done, which crews come to cover your game. And I think we handle it as well as anybody because, we usually have the number 1 crew or the number 2 crew. But that's what makes the NFL great. The drama, the daily drama, and the thing that sustains that drama is winning. Everybody cares when you're winning.
No, exactly. But it seems like through the first 6 weeks we've had our share of the drama going on. But let's talk about the Jets a little bit. And second-year coach, what a season he is having so far with this team. They've had quarterback issues with the injuries. They played Joe Flacco and Zach Wilson in their first 6 games. They're coming off of first year 4-13 record. They're building through the draft. They've done a great job. Like they really hit this year on their 3 first-round picks. They've done a great job in trading and all that to have 3 first-round picks. And you mentioned Sauce Gardner. He's playing like hot sauce, man. He is doing it. Like being in New Orleans, boy, you know about good hot sauce. And
absolutely.
Got the wide receiver Garrett Wilson, who I think is going to be a really good player, and I think their edge player Jermaine Johnson is going to be dynamic. I really think that. They've done a great job on defense, and the thing that stands out to me, especially in this last game, is their special teams. They are winning. I think they blocked the punt or they blocked
the punt. Blocked the kick too, right?
You block a punt in the National Football League in a game, you're probably upwards of 90% going to be the victor at the end of the 60 minutes. It just happens, when that changes the momentum. Usually it's a big change in field position, or it's a score, blocking it, if you block it for a touchdown. They've done a great job, and Coach Saleh has got defensive minded, special teams minded. He's got those guys playing good right now.
It's really impressive. Like I said, it's always great with their winners. It's good to see. It's good to see that they're both playing well. Let's hope they can kind of keep it going and keep continuing. It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't talk about the Cowboys. Dak's been announcing for the last couple of 3 weeks that he's coming back, but apparently they're going to activate him today to the active roster. The Cowboys are going to play the Lions on Sunday at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. I thought Jerry Jones had some really interesting comments after the game on this past Sunday, where he said to the media that if Dak was ready, he seems like he's ready. He had this to say to him. He said he had a very impressive throwing session before the game in Philadelphia. He showed good ball placement through the ball with strength and speed and zip. Ball indications, barring any setback this week in practice, Dak's got a really good chance of being out there as a starting quarterback. So the experts and the guys who do the stuff in Vegas have all said that they're going to win this week against Detroit, and the next week they play the Bears, who struggle and can't get anything done on offense. So they've got a chance if they win the next 2 weeks to ease into their bye week at 6-2. So, Coach, let me ask you this: what would you be looking for this week out of Dak as a head coach for a guy who hadn't played in 5 weeks? What are sort of the key indicators that you'd be looking for to see if he's ready to go?
Thing that we do the things that I know for sure, and not even worry about them, and that is going to be in game shape, because he's been able to run and all that. You're not worried about him being in shape for the game. That's the thing that I'd be most concerned about. And then I'm also would take a look at making sure that he's been doing that mental prep, and I'm sure he has. I'm sure he's been preparing, even though he knew he wasn't going to be playing, that he's going through and taking the mental reps, been in the meetings, all of those things. So the only concern I'd have is, there is a difference between game speed and practice speed. You can't mimic it, meaning game speed at practice. It just doesn't happen. There's a whole different gear when those guys go out there in their game jersey, not the practice jersey.
Right.
The good thing is, as you mentioned, they're playing the Lions and the Bears over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so, you can never discount any team in the NFL, but on paper they should win the games. And I think that they've done the right thing with Dak, and he's been wanting to come back probably the last couple weeks.
Yep.
They're going to be able to get him some game time here and into the first half of the season. And I think the Cowboys are going to be a team to be reckoned with, even though they didn't win last week. They're too good on defense, and with Dak back, they're going to be a completely different dynamic in play on the offensive side of the football.
Coach, switching gears here down to Tampa. I don't know if you saw the highlights. Have been running on the loop all week from Sunday's Tampa Bay-Pittsburgh game that was played Sunday in Pittsburgh. But there's been a ton of attention paid to the Bucs, and not all for the right reasons. First of all, the Bucs fell to 3-3 with Sunday's 2018 loss to a depleted Steelers team, which entered the game, as we all know, with one win. And then secondly, the TV cameras caught Brady, kind of screaming and yelling at his offensive lineman in between series. And, Brady kind of on his radio show, with his national radio show with Jim Gray, sort of, talked a little bit about that. And he said he was just, he wasn't screaming at anybody particularly. He was just trying to motivate his guys. And he's done that before. But then thirdly, we learned, Brady missed Friday's workout and Saturday's workout in Tampa so he could fly to New York and attend the wedding of Patriots owner Robert Kraft. So I was on the phone with a reporter yesterday who covers the Bucs, and he said very quietly, guys in the locker room are starting to, get a little agitated with regards to what's kind of being, discussed amongst them as a double standard. Brady gets to do one thing, the rest of us have to do another thing. So let me ask you this question. I mean, you've been in the locker room. We talked, and you alluded to it earlier. There's a lot of drama that goes on with 53 players in the locker room as the season goes, and it probably ratchets up and intensifies when you're not winning. Did you think we'd be having this discussion and all this stuff, be talking about Tom, his personal life? He missed 11 games. He's missing time. Do you think we'd be having any of this discussion if they were 5-1 instead of 3-3?
I'm 100% sure that if they were 5-1, nobody would be talking about this, Greg. It's all about winning in the National Football League. There's no doubt about it. It's been, this drama isn't just been in the season, the first 6 weeks of the season. This has been going on since the end of last year.
Yeah.
Tom retires. The head coach steps down, takes a position in the front office after Tom Brady unretires. Todd Bowles, becomes the defensive coordinator. Todd Bowles, he's named the head coach. He takes time away, 11 days in training camp. He misses practices. They're not playing. He misses practice on Friday and Saturday, like you said, to go to a wedding. If they're 5-1, nobody's talking about this. And look, don't treat, as a head coach, you don't treat everybody the same, but you treat as fair as you can possibly be.
Yep.
Member of the football team. And it's tough decisions that you have to make as a head coach on so many levels. Unfortunately, Tampa Bay is not in a big market. It's not LA, it's not New York, but man, this, for some reason right now, Tom Brady, not only is he on the sports page, but he's on he's on every section of the newspaper.
It's sick to New York. I mean, there was talk last week about, they both him and Giselle have got lawyers. And my guys in Tampa say it's the players are starting to kind of talk a little bit about it, and there's a lot of sidebar conversations going on in the locker room, and that's not good for anybody.
No, it's not, Reggie. But let's put this all in perspective. Tom Brady is he's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time as far as quarterbacks are concerned. All this is going on. They're not playing well. Their offensive numbers are down. They're not the same as they have been in years past. But guess what? They're in first place in the NFC South.
Correct. They're in first place.
Tied for first, but the NFC South is probably maybe the weakest division in football. This year or through the first 6 games, it's sure looking that way. So there's lots of football to be played. There's 11 more games to be played, a college season to be played in the NFL. And, Tom hasn't forgotten how to win games. And they're going to figure it out. And I believe at the end of the season, they're going to be in the discussion for who's going to be in the playoffs. There's no doubt in my mind.
We're talking about kickers, Coach. I was watching the game on Monday night with the kicker. I can't think of the guy's name. Let me see. Was it Dustin Hopkins? You're watching the game, and as I mentioned, kickers don't get a whole lot of attention, but this guy did something I thought was pretty impressive in the 1916 win over the Broncos. The guy he popped his hamstring while he was kicking one of the field goals, and he went on to make 3 more as the game went on, including the game winner of 39 yards. And it was just announced this morning that he's going to miss the next 2 to 4 weeks because of a popped hamstring. So that's a tough, and they got to get that fixed because they play Seattle this week and they'll probably need their kicker. So let me ask you this, Coach. You dealt with players that were hurt all the time. Did you ever deal with a kicker who kind of battled through a leg injury to help your team win a game? I don't remember that happening in Atlanta, but maybe it did. Was that ever one of the things, a point of emphasis for us?
It was. In fact, his hamstring, and it was just something that just lingered on and on the entire season. I don't know if you remember, he didn't kick during the week for about 4 weeks. We just kept him on ice, knowing that he was our guy, but he was having some hamstring issues. Of course, he didn't kick off, so it wasn't a whole lot of stress on the big deep kicks.
Yeah.
But Matt was rock solid in terms of his ability to kick it between the pipes. He's in my opinion, one of the better clutch performers in the history of the NFL in terms of game winners and things like that. So, and he was up in years in terms of age in the NFL. He was 41 or 42 years old. Didn't have the best body. I know he's in great shape now, but he had a kicker's body. There was no doubt about it. And he's one of my favorites in terms of his ability. And we had him on a pitch count almost the whole time that we were there. We knew that come game time he would be able to perform, but we didn't want to put any jeopardy on him going out there and doing it in practice. So there were weeks that he didn't practice at all, kicking the ball. He had his routine, over on the own side. I'd go, "Hey, do you want to kick today?" He'd say, "Nah, I'm good." And I've heard other stories of guys, doing that way back. I've heard stories of kickers in training camp, running on the field, taking their golf shoes off, putting their kicking shoes on to kick. I think Jan Stenerud supposedly was an avid golfer there, and for Coach Hank Stram, and he just showed up to kick. Guys like that, and especially specialists, they are a big part of the team. But as you know, Reggie, about 95% of the time that they're practicing on their own field. There's 3 of them over there. There's a kicker, there's a snapper, and there's a holder. It's basically a whole different team over there that you integrate in the practices for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day.
those guys are so important because, you know, a lot of games, and like you said, we talked about all the time, you know, the difference in the NFL winning and losing is this much. And a lot of times, you know, because of the way the game is designed, those guys, that operation, if one part of that operation ain't working, you know, that's the difference between, you know, going 13-3 whereas versus 10-6. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You know, this year, one score games, I think they're unpaid. I think they're within one of these, and you know, the games are so close, and it usually is going to come down to, you know, a kick here, a kick there, or a punt. You know, people don't realize that you know, the punters take a big part of the game as well in terms of changing the field position. You know, being able to knock the ball out of bounds inside the 5-yard line. You know, those specialists, you know, they can't hide. You know, you know, everybody knows who kicked it, and you know, when you have an incomplete pass or a run play breaks down, you don't know if it was the quarterback or the wide receiver's issue, but usually it's pretty evident when a kicker or a punter makes a mistake. There's no doubt about it, and they're very integral though in the NFL, because in the NFL the game is going to be so tight. And that's what makes, as we mentioned earlier, that's what makes it so great. And I can't wait for week 7. This week, there's going to be some big games, and there'll be some surprise news. There's no doubt, there's no doubt about it. You know, Reds, the one thing that I want to say about the NFL that has changed immensely in the last 4 or 5 years, and I've been out now for 4, but it has to do with the coverage. You know, we're almost being covered like Hollywood. The people want to write, and it's happening with Tom Brady right now. They want to write about their personal lives. Look, the game is the game, and that's what we should be reporting. It's gone way too far. You know, guys' personal lives and things like that. We don't need to know what a guy's doing on Friday night, or if he's got this issue or that issue. Right. It's all about what they can do on Sundays, Thursdays, Mondays right now. And I feel for the guys because they're under a microscope, and it's almost like the National Enquirer in some cities.
You're Mike, you're spot on, because what's happened is, I've been out since 2015, but I'm still very connected to a lot of PR guys that I hired, and I think there's 7 guys who run NFL PR departments now that I hired or helped hire, and I talk to those guys often. I talk to the guy in Tampa often. Obviously, Ted Cruz, who's executive VP of PR for the Chiefs, who we know very well, who was with us in Tampa. I talk to Ted probably once every couple of weeks, and the one thing that guys say, to your point, is there's so much more they got to worry about as opposed to just getting the coach to the production meeting with the TV crew, getting the quarterback, the transcripts, so we can all kind of be on the same page like we did with regards to the production meeting. Guys now are having to, talk to the National Enquirer. They're now having to credential TMZ. They're now having to deal with things that have nothing to do with what goes on the field. And it's made it that much harder. I mean, one guy was telling me that sometimes he walks in his open locker room period and he sees people from the National Enquirer. He sees people from TMZ. He sees people from some of the Entertainment Tonight magazines, television magazines. He sees people from Page 6. He gets calls from Page 6 from the New York Post. And that's hard because, managing the media flow of an NFL team's hard enough when you're dealing with the traditional media. It's much, much harder when the head coach looks over, and like you didn't miss anything. When the head coach looks over and sees people, usually very attractive girls around, and they say, who's that? Who's that? Did anybody tell me about that? Who's that? So it's hard. It's gotten much, much harder. You're right. It's gotten much, much harder. And the guys who were in the job that I was in talk about how it's not as much fun as it used to be, because instead of focusing on the X's and O's and the games, the guys are having to sort of be in sort of defensive mode to sort of combat the stuff that we just talked about.
Yeah, and it's getting tougher and tougher for players to navigate it, especially the guys that are very successful. They just don't want to talk about the 400-yard game that you had, or why this happened or why that happened in the game. Now they're wanting to talk about things outside of football, and that makes it tough. It makes it tough on the players. Not only the player that has to go through those conversations, but it's the rest of the locker room, the rest of the organization. And, I don't know who said it, but, publicity is good, and bad publicity is good too. Good publicity, if they're talking about you, then, you're in front of people. And I just don't know about that. I really don't. It's been changing, and it's changing very quickly, the way that people take in information. It's almost instantaneous. We had the NFL, the owners meetings yesterday, and there weren't but 32 guys in that meeting, and maybe 2 or 3 when it's that privileged meeting, yeah. And guess what? There's stuff coming out from the meeting what somebody said.
Right.
So,
that used to. I don't ever remember that happening back in the day when we were there. I don't remember those conversations when the owners got together and it was just the owners. You had no idea what was going on in those meetings most of the time. No idea.
Yep. And now people are coming out and before the meeting saying what's going to be discussed.
Right.
It's tough. It is tough. It is tough. But hey, that's the world that we live in. Everybody has so much more access. And even if you try to limit the access, you're not going to be able to limit it completely. And, I'm sure there's the mindset around some of the people in the league offices. Hey, let's get as much information out, whether it's good, whether it's bad. We'll spin it one way, we'll spin it another way. If the shield's out there and people are talking about the shield, it's a good thing for the NFL. And I'm sure that's been discussed at all kinds of levels throughout the NFL and in all sports.
Well, I tell you what, we'll be checking on. I'm excited about tomorrow night's game between the Cardinals and the Saints. The game will be played at State Farm Stadium out in Glendale. The Cardinals get DeAndre Hopkins back, and they're always happy to get him. He's a generational talent. The guy's a great player. He had to miss the first couple of 4 games because of a violation of one of the league's policies. But he's a great player. He can get him back, and there's a stat this morning that talked about how the quarterback Kyler Murray, how his numbers are through the roof when Hopkins is back, and how they're not so good when he's not out there. And the Saints are kind of in panic mode. They're 2-4, and Dennis Allen's trying to figure out some answers. He hadn't had a lot of his guys. I think they're going to get the receiver from Ohio State back. He was in concussion protocol. I think they get him back. So that'll be a good game. That'll be a good game. So. Listen, Coach, we'll go ahead.
It's got to be cold. It's got to be better than that. That kicked off the NFL week. But hey, we'll all be watching Thursday. Yeah. We'll all be watching Sunday. We'll all be watching Monday. And hey, we'll be talking it, chopping it up, talking ball. And hopefully there'll be some great plays on the field, and not so much off the field.
Listen, we'll bring it back to you. Listen, Coach, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back with another edition of Talking Ball on the BallFather podcast with the coach and the PR man. Coach, have a great week. Hopefully you go on and hit that golf ball. You look like you got your golf shirt on. You look like you're going to hit it today.
Reggie, I'm looking at about 2.5 inches of snow up on the top of the mountain. High of about 35. No golf today, brother.
No golf today.
No golf today.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we'll get with you. We'll check out what's going on in the league, and everybody stay safe. And we'll be back with you with another edition of the BallFather podcast next week. Take care, everybody. Take care, Coach.
Take care, man.
All right. See you, man. Bye.